The Brewhouse was created to capture and share with you the long history of the Genesee Brewery. But the brewery itself isn't half as interesting as the beer and the people who make it. Visit GeneseeBrewhouse.com. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Welcome, and welcome to Bob Bleier, who's back with us. Nice to have you.
Back in the saddle, guys.
Section 5 Hall of Famer, former NFL quarterback. Talk a little football.
Absolutely. That's
Mike
what it's
Catalana,
all about.
Pat Duffy, what are you wearing?
Today we are honoring him coming back from his long injury. Current Rochester American, former Buffalo Sabre, Nathan Pache. It's felt so long since the Sabres have been good. Nathan Pache, who was playing on this Amherst team, was on the President's Cup trophy team the last time the Sabres did anything in the playoffs.
Nice. And the Amherst playing really well, too. Bobby, this is the big week of football, conference championships, Final Four. Do you retain any allegiance to the Patriots, having played for those guys?
I actually do.
100 years ago?
I squeeze for them every week. It's getting harder and harder because I have players in the league that I'm very fond of, that I like to follow. I'm a defensive mind, too. I always watch the other side of the ball being a quarterback. So it's been an exciting run. I think some teams are there that have kind of squeaked out some lucky wins, had some fortunate endings of some games, but I think it's going to come down to defense. It usually does in the Final Four. And we were talking about this earlier. Maybe New England's got the weakest of the four defenses at this point, I feel. So it's going to be. I think it's going to be a challenge.
Cool. What do you got, guys?
Well, I mean, I look at it and look. We know that the quarterback situation is not. Wouldn't anybody would start the year and go Case Keenum, Nick Foles, these type of quarterbacks. With the Eagles, it's different than the other two teams because Nick Foles jumped on late in the year after Carson Wentz had put them in this position. And as much as I'll obviously be pulling for the Eagles, I don't think if Nick Foles took over all season, I think they're a 500 team with Nick Foles during the year. They are. It's a little different with Case Keenum and the Vikings because he took over really early. Obviously, they have a great defense and all, but to his credit, he played well all year long. And I have no idea what to make of the Jaguars in that case because he looked like the worst quarterback. Tyrod was not good in the game against the Bills, and he was worse than Tyrod in that game. And then he lights up the Steelers.
But he didn't really light them up. But even in that game against New England, just after halftime, he only had 97 yards passing. You're forgetting here. People are just kind of...
And completing only half his passes.
You had a defensive touchdown and then an interception by Miles Jack to put them inside the 20-yard line.
But he made smart decisions in big plays. He actually looked at his progressions. The one time he got back, he was under a little pressure. He went boom, 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 dumped it off to the back. This was after the Steelers. They cut it to 7. Blake Bortles made the right read, and the guy picked up 30 yards. Again, he's Blake Bortles. So you've got 3 basic backups and Tom Brady.
But here's why I think they're gonna make some damage this weekend is that he's about moving the chains. You don't teach that anymore in that league. Tyrod, 3rd and 8, he drops down to a 3-yard gain. They punt. Bortles moves the chains. He's very aware of down and distance. He moves the chains. He gets first downs by 1, 2, 3 yards, uses his feet all the time. The guy is a winner. I can't discount it. I just can't discount it.
I think that Tomlin got wrapped up in the fact that Bortles was running the ball a little bit better against the Bills, and he was focused on stopping that because he didn't think Bortles could throw the ball, and I think he had a lucky day. Because listen, you want to talk about a game against the Bills? I didn't see him dropping passes 1 or 2 yards past the first down marker that day. In fact, he was so bad throwing the ball, the box score, I go look at, and we talked about this last week, the box score, the Bills only had 1 defended pass in that playoff game. Not because the Bills' corners weren't good, but because Bortles was so bad, the ball was far enough away where the corners couldn't get a hold of it.
Pick winners.
Patriots, obviously, and I like the Vikings. Patriots-Vikings Super Bowl.
Bobby.
Same thing. Pats, Vikings.
We got horses in the race, but it's nice to wear the Vikings.
I'm saying for the Vikings, and same for you.
I was going to say, what are you guys, a barbershop
I think the
duo?
Patriots are going to win. I think that's awful hard for Jacksonville to go there and get a win in Foxborough. And honestly, the Eagles and the Vikings are very, very similar teams, just like last week in Atlanta. And the Eagles' defense at home has been... At home, they are as good or better than any defense in the NFL. And I think that'll be a sense of pride going against the Vikings, who have a phenomenal defense. Close game. I'm going to be a homer here. I picked them last week. I'm picking them again. Eagles, Patriots. The last time the Eagles made the Super Bowl, they beat the Vikings, they beat the Falcons, and then they played the Patriots. I think it's a repeat.
Interesting.
Look at that.
Guy does his research. This is the Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. We'll talk Buffalo Bills. They have a new offensive coordinator next. The Press Box, brought to you in part by Connors and Ferris, your workers' comp attorneys. Call 262-COMP, C-O-M-P, today. Welcome back. It's the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse, and this portion brought to you by Connors and Ferris. Buffalo Bills have a new offensive coordinator, and I confess, with all the good people that were available, seemingly, that this name came to me out of nowhere.
Okay, so it depends on how you look at it. He's a guy with NFL experience, not the greatest as an offensive coordinator because you look at the circumstances. Not great head coaches, not great quarterbacks, but he has been a coordinator in the NFL before, been with the Patriots, has 5 Super Bowl rings. It's nice to be with the Patriots, being there as an assistant coach. And then he works for Nick Saban. I think this is a guy who fits Sean McDermott. He's a process guy. He is a do-your-job guy. He, personality-wise, I think will fit him. How good is he going to be? Tell me who the quarterback's going to be, and then we'll know how good of a coordinator he is.
Haven't used his name yet. What's
Brian Daboll. Daboll. And, and again, certainly if those two guys hire him, and there were stories this past week that if the Patriots' Josh McDaniel leaves, Daboll would have been on the very short list to maybe become the offensive coordinator in Foxborough. So if that's the guy's reputation, and he had a job. He wasn't going anywhere in Alabama. And they just won the national championship, and he did it when they changed quarterbacks at halftime. So, again. Well,
I saw him as a guy who, he played for the U of R, and his last NFL job was a tight ends coach. That didn't fit the profile to me.
Yeah,
but I mean,
his last NFL job.
Sure,
yeah.
But that being said, with everything that's happened so far, all the surprise stuff, not a lot of people knew who McDermott was. Nobody knew who Brandon Beane was. All of the moves, you go sign 2 safeties that nobody's ever heard of that both should be Pro Bowlers right now. How can you doubt anything that this regime wants to do? I mean, I didn't know who Daboll was until they hired him the other day. And by the way, they knew how bad the news was because they dumped it between playoff games on Sunday.
Now, trust in this regime is a whole new page for you.
But
you've been down on these guys.
What? I hear that about the old days of the dumping of news. It's during NFL football, ready for the NFL football, and everybody in the world now knows who they picked. And it's not like you were selling tickets the next day.
Okay.
I don't think there's any reason to sort of bear. What? If you hire Mike McCoy, everybody's going to be all excited?
Then why did they do it literally in the 4 minutes between end of game and kickoff on Sunday?
They had him hired. He's not an NFL guy. There's no. What? They're not holding a news conference for it. They announced it. They sent it out.
That's the other surprising thing is we haven't heard him speak yet.
The same thing they did the last time when they hired their coordinators. They'll eventually have their coaching staff. They're all going to be at the Senior Bowl. That's probably the first time we'll hear from the guy.
Complete coincidence that 4 minutes in between games is when they dumped it.
How big a deal is a coordinator?
Well, let me ask you guys something. Is it better to fish for an OC or to get better offensive players? I'm torn between Buffalo's entire MO. Yeah, first time they made the playoffs in forever. I don't see it happening again. They go to an OC instead of trying to get real quality, skilled players on the offensive side of the ball.
This is not a time to get players. There's no players to get. This is not
free agency is coming up.
Yeah, but
you've got Le'Veon Bell. You've got some great quarterbacks.
But that's not
up.
until March. They can't do that. You got to get the coaches hired now. The coaches are going to go fast, and you got to get the coaches hired now.
I'm against that.
Are you suggesting that you keep Dennison, the guy that they had, and see what he could do with better players?
No, I think you make the change after free agency. After you get quality players, they need receivers.
Well, they know
they need some O-line. They need a quarterback desperately. I just don't understand the movement.
I think they want to have a plan. Again, the plan may fail, but I think they want to have a plan in place
the concept.
And then get the players to fit what they're trying to do. It's not going to be Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, but just again, with the offensive coordinator, I mean, if you get a good coordinator, how much better can he make a team that maybe doesn't have the players he wants?
If you think about the OC position, the key relationship is with your quarterback. So you look at Alabama. What's he done at Alabama? You know, he has that sophomore quarterback. I don't know if he triggered the change at halftime. I'm assuming he was part of it.
Yeah.
In the national championship game. That kid was solid.
Of the year.
Kid was solid.
I'm going to say that was made by the head coach, but Again, the stories in Alabama where Daboll was pushing for it. Now, that can be the case. He might be saying, hey, let's get this kid in there. I mean, Jalen Hurts is not like a great offensive quarterback, but Alabama was winning. Again,
he
we
prepared
don't know.
the kid, though.
The only thing you say about coordinators, the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills is a very important position because your head coach is a defensive guy, and he needs somebody to run that offense, and they know that offense stunk last year, and they need much better this year.
It's for fans of the team. We're still basically fans of the team. It's like it's the one guy you can attack. You always the play calling is one guy you think you could do better than.
Right.
Everyone else can't touch him. This is the Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Condis and Ferris brought you this segment. Coming up next, Like It or Not. Here's the Press Box trivia question brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Here's the Press Box trivia answer brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Welcome back to the Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Like it or not, Pat, Mike Tomlin's immediate future in Pittsburgh.
I don't understand I think it's an overreaction, right? Like, let's be real. The Steelers had a pretty good season, all things considered. They had a lot of roadblocks, the Le'Veon Bell stuff, the suspension with a couple of different players along the way, Ben Roethlisberger not knowing if he wants to be there. They went out and they laid an egg in one game. Keep in mind, this is a team that should have beaten the New England Patriots the other day, or a couple of weeks ago, and then would have had that number one seed going into the playoffs. I think they may either underestimated their opponent or planned poorly for Blake Bortles and his legs. I don't see much of a problem. It looks like the offensive coordinator, Todd Haley, isn't going to come back. How do you get rid of a guy after getting the number 2 seed in the playoffs in the Pittsburgh Steelers?
You don't get rid of him, but he's on notice now, I think, in Pittsburgh. He failed this year. He failed. Their team was not prepared. That team got by in games. If you watch them play, they went on a winning streak. And it was the most unimpressive 7-game winning streak you'll ever see. They ended up losing a game to the Chicago Bears. They got crushed by Jacksonville, and they gave up the home field against New England, and that team was not prepared to play Jacksonville in that game. Mike Tomlin's been a winner. He's got 2 Super Bowls. He's not going anywhere yet, but I think for the first time in his time in Pittsburgh, he is on notice, and next year, things better change in Pittsburgh.
Is it possible to have an unimpressive 7-game win streak?
Yeah, it is if you watch them play. They beat teams like Green Bay. It was like Green Bay in the game. They went down to the wire. They struggled through games that Pittsburgh should have been winning handily. They let bad teams stay in the game. They are the anti-Patriots. They play down to teams. They open their mouths too much. They are immensely talented. That team had every reason to be playing New England this week at home with a legitimate shot to be back in the Super Bowl, and that goes on Mike Tomlin.
Well, they couldn't stop anybody. They had to outscore everybody. They just couldn't stop anybody.
I'd love to know what they were against Vegas, because, all those lines and everything against the spread, only because that's like a measure of how they did it against expectation. And I bet, like you said, they weren't good.
Look at how they won. I mean, if you look at that stretch of games that they won, it just was like they figure a way because they are talented.
Yep.
And Antonio Brown is ridiculous, some of the plays he makes, but they should be better.
Let's do with basketball here, Mike. Like it or not, the Warriors go out to Cleveland and win fairly convincingly.
Yeah, the Warriors are just head and shoulders better than anybody now. But I will say this about Cleveland. Cleveland is a mess at the moment. But go back 1 year from now, and they were a mess for different reasons. Now, they had Kyrie Irving still, but they have no idea what they're doing yet. It's a unique time because they're going to be trying to figure out, can they keep LeBron? What are they doing all? But right now, Cleveland has more worries about beating Toronto and Boston to make it to the finals than they do even competing with Golden State.
How bad can you allow yourself to be, though? I mean, there was a statistic. I mean, they lost back-to-back games by like 25 points last week. And they said no NBA champion has ever done that.
Correct. I think, what I've been hearing, there's rumblings of now, when Thomas came back, that they're a much slower team. They're methodical. They don't pass the ball as much. He forces some shots. They're a different team. Kyrie was the man at the one.
Well, Pat just last week said you thought IT was going to hurt them.
Yeah. He's proving that I think he's hurting them right now.
It's way early to be saying that. He's only played for a couple of weeks. And the reality is they could be on the road for every series. LeBron James is by far the best player certainly in the Eastern Conference, and they will road or favorite. If they're playing well, they will go to the finals because they'll beat everybody. But
I just think you can't keep doing it this way, though.
I think they're digging a rut.
They comically walked through the East last year. I mean, Boston made one little play against them, but they destroyed them in 2 of the games, and they're still better than them, and they're still better right now. I mean, talent-wise, they still are better, but they better start playing better. But it's January. LeBron starts really going in March and April.
Do you think LeBron's taking too big a role in the organization right now?
He's always taken a big role.
He's making a lot of the calls. He's such a good player. He does all his talking on the floor and on the court. I just don't know, when you see professional athletes get involved in management or making decisions, something about the dynamics and the chemistry of a team, it goes away. It does.
Yeah, it's hurt him a little bit, but he's also LeBron.
Mr. Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Unfinished Business is next.
With Dunkin' Deals, get a $2 medium latte from 2 to 6 p.m. Looks like it's latte o'clock. Time for a rich, creamy afternoon pick-me-up with a $2 medium latte from 2 to 6 p.m. America runs on Dunkin'.
Welcome back to the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse, our favorite portion of the show. Unfinished Business, brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts, and America runs on Dunkin'. Pat.
How about you make up your mind? For the last couple seasons, I've seen stories about the NFL and the NHL. The hitting and the fighting are out of the game. And what happened to these soft professional athletes? And where's the grit? So you'd be pretty surprised when you turn on your television this week and saw a whole bunch of stories. Does the NBA have an image problem? Because all of the guys this week decided to start throwing punches and getting in each other's faces. How about you decide what you want? The NFL can't be too soft, and the NBA can't have an image problem all at the same time. I love late 80s, early 90s physical basketball. Past the point of Kermit Washington almost killing Rudy Tomjanovich, but right around where Barkley and Ewing and all of those guys would bounce around a little bit. We're getting back to that hardcore basketball. What's the problem with it? Do you care that your 7-year-old kid is going to be a little uncomfortable that Blake Griffin is getting his shorts ripped off by a guy that wants to punch him in the face every once in a while? And here's the thing. If you didn't play those highlights of those guys throwing fists at each other over and over and over again, most of America wouldn't see it. Embrace this kind of basketball because it might be the last professional sport that people aren't yelling is too soft anymore.
I'm still trying to get over you invoking the name Kermit Washington.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, and guys take too much offense. Everybody wants to throw a punch now, and they're not like they were in the 90s, because those guys were really tough in the 90s. Now everybody's offended. Everybody wants to throw a punch. And the whole thing with the Clippers and the Rockets was a joke.
Yeah, but the game is much better now, though, too. You got to give it that.
Well, but that's just the only negative there could be is if they start getting more physical again, it's going to slow down the game, which has gotten super fast. But let's see what happens. Let it happen.
I'm thinking maybe this is going to be a really, really great year in free agency in the NFL. We got a lot of players coming out. Typically some really, really big-name quarterbacks like Cousins and Garofalo and Breeze. But I'm thinking at this point in time, probably Le'Veon Bell. He's not going to get the money that the quarterbacks are getting coming out of free agency, but I think he's going to be the most important find for a team. He's dynamic. He can help in the run game. He can help catching balls out of the backfield. He's a great blocker. He's a scheme guy. You get him the ball 20 to 30 times a game, he's going to be ideal for a team that needs him. So, yeah, you're going to hear about all the big money plays with some of the quarterbacks. I think Le'Veon Bell is going to be the most sought after free agent coming into the market coming up this year, and maybe Buffalo should take him.
I think it's just slap a franchise tag on him, though. That spoils everything.
He said he's not going to sign, though. He said if he gets that franchise tag, he ain't signing second year in a row. I believe him.
Yeah. All right, so we're down to the Final Four now in the NFL, and, this was what it seemed like the Eagles' year this year, to go to the Super Bowl and maybe be the favorite and maybe have the MVP in Carson Wentz, and then he goes down, and everybody's down, and everybody rightfully is down because the Eagles, with Nick Foles, as everyone has seen, are not the same team. But I give these teams credit, whether it's the Minnesota Vikings or the Eagles, and to some extent the Jacksonville Jaguars, though they're a little different that way. You got to play differently. You're not the Eagles team that went through the season putting up 30, 35 points almost every game with a quarterback that in most games was the best player on the field. You got to play differently, but that doesn't mean you can't win. You got to ugly it up. You got to play defense. You got to get all 53 together to try to figure out a way to win. They did it last week, and they survived. Maybe they'll do it this week and survive. But one of those teams is going to end up in the Super Bowl, whether it's the Eagles or the Vikings. They're pretty much the same team now. And while I'm wearing purple, I'm thinking green Sunday.
So what do you say? We make a deal here? We get Patriots-Eagles too?
I think there's obviously a very good chance they're both the home teams this week, but it could be Vikings-Jags.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. No.
This is the Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brew House. This portion, Unfinished Business, brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. Bob Bleier, thank you very much. Always great to have your expertise on the game.
I'll expect to have another invite shortly.
Alrighty then. Guys, thanks again.
All right, thanks.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week with the Rochester Press Box.